welcome on the Dharma journey, James. So glad to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
James is a fellow Brit, and yeah, I've been watching his posts for a while. He runs a podcast called the Bloke podcast, and is a mental health coach and supporting men kind of through their journey with mental health, which I think is so needed. And I know it's not probably the easiest subject to help people with, that initial kind of resistance that, men and women have. So I would love to ask you first, what is the change that you wish to see in the world, and how are you contributing to that change?
Um, I think that's a fantastic question. I think it's to do with the collective healing of men, but not just isolated to men, because um, I don't like grouping and sort of isolating men. I don't think that men's are different to women, or I don't think that women aren't. It's just my lens. It's the way that I view the world. It's my experience through the lens of a cisgender straight man. So yeah, I just want to support and help men on their journeys with whether it's their mental health, their emotional resilience, relationship with themselves, with their partners, with the world. Cool, that sounds really like big, doesn't it? That's a bit daunting.
What a
Yeah,
big
just
mission.
to help men.
Well, I'm kind of doing the opposite and helping the females, and I always feel like we have to help ourselves first. So
Mm.
we can only help people as far as we've helped ourselves. So I would love to, I know you're in a bit of a transition right now, which is so beautiful, and that's why I, kind of wanted to bring you on, because so many people listening are in a similar transition. That, the whole world is changing every single day, and a lot of the things that we are normally normal to us are being kind of taken away, or we're sat to be with ourselves, which is kind of confronting. So I think mental health is obviously definitely an issue that we need to bring to our awareness. Have you noticed in the last year, men struggling more with mental health, being inside and not having that freedom that men, obviously we all, but men especially, desire?
Uh, Definitely. I've been really blessed. So over the last few years, especially since I launched the kind of social media page at the beginning of lockdown. So the Honest Bloke is, a moniker, if you like, designed to just talk about, it's my journey of learning to be honest about my struggles, my challenges with mental health, and um, it became a safe space for me to share all of my experiences, but also then hold space for others. And I think I've been really, really blessed to have, a lot of people that men that I know, men that I don't, but come to me and share all kinds of challenges that they've experienced over the last year with lockdown. Relationships have ended. Just people have been through so many changes because they've been forced to either sit with themselves or sit with their partners or look inwards. And um, I think it was really, really confronting for a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people. So yeah, it's been a blessing to be able to uh, yeah, hold space for these men, and um, just support and guide them really.
Mm. Yeah, it's beautiful. And obviously, I think naturally we come to our, I would say, dharma or purpose, or the thing that kind of lights us up through our own suffering. I know for me, health has been something that is obviously important to everyone, but I've definitely had challenges with my health, and it's been something that's really passionate for me. Now I feel in a good space. I really want to help others with their health, especially females. I know for you, just speaking, in the beforehand, you were obviously you've had a bit of a journey with your health, and I think it's really powerful for you to share your kind of story, and just to know that men go through this as well, and just often we just don't know about it because they're not as open and vocal as women. So maybe you could share a little bit about your kind of journey with your mental health, and how that's transitioned to pursuing, what you're doing now, and actually leaving your corporate job behind, which is amazing. I'm so happy for you. It's going to be such a beautiful journey. But yeah, just for the listeners, so they can kind of get a bit of a background on your kind of journey.
Yeah, sure. So, so my journey around my mental health started it was towards the end of 2014. So I had been living in Australia for nearly a year and a half. I spent my early 20s working in sales, and at 23 I decided to go and travel and see some of the world, as many of us do, and go and find myself. And yeah, I'd been living in Australia for a year and a half. I was 6 months into a relationship with a girl from Australia, from Sydney. And just before we met, she had actually planned to go and travel herself. So she'd made all of these plans. She'd booked the flights. She wanted to go on this journey. And she was coming over to Europe and the UK to see this part of the world. I mean, she was young. She was 19. I was 23 at the time. So so that happened. And when she left, I didn't know it at the time, but after a lot of figuring things out, I realized that she triggered a huge abandonment wound that I wasn't aware of. I didn't know what was there. What that looked like at the time was a complete and utter sort of meltdown, in terms of my mental health. I remember questioning everything. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to look after myself. I felt bereft of purpose. I had absolutely just it went from really good to really bad, like frighteningly quickly, because I had no idea what was going on. So that actually ended up bringing me back to the UK. One, I was following my heart and following the relationship back. She was spending some time in the UK. And we had a plan that she could still go off and see Europe, but I'd be a lot closer to her. And I had to move home because I was struggling to look after myself. I couldn't work. I had to quit my job that I'd been sponsored to stay in Australia doing. So at that point, I spent, I came back to the UK, went back to living at home for a little bit. Picked up a similar job, the old corporate job, and did that for a little longer. And yeah, went on a journey just to try and sort of unpack and figure out my mental health. The thing that kind of, I guess, a big shift for me was actually that I spent 2 years in that relationship. I got engaged. I was, following what I thought was my heart. But I was deeply, deeply unhappy. And I actually had to leave the relationship and take some time on my own, go to therapy, speak to someone, really unpack it all. To realize that I was actually in a relationship I was deeply unhappy in. I guess that kind of ties into, the work I talk about being honest. When I say the honest bloke and learning to be honest, there's so many times in my life where I was being as honest as I could be with myself, but there was a deeper truth that I was too scared to access and I didn't know how to dive into. So, I was living my truth at the time. My truth at the time was I was in love and I wanted to get married to this girl and, do all of these things. But, I was deeply disconnected. And I figured that out, as I say, over the next year or so. But then, I followed my heart. I guess I followed my dharma at the time. I quit my corporate job at that point and I became a PT, ran a personal training business for a few years. And that served me and gave me so much at the time, but went on. I almost repeated the same cycle. I got into another relationship. I was single for about a year. Went all in. Showed up in that relationship. I thought I was being a fantastic boyfriend. Turns out I was extremely anxiously attached. Completely love bombed the relationship, and then. It was back in May of 2018. I'd been in that relationship for about 6 months, and I ended up losing one of my best friends to suicide. And in terms of what that did for me, that certainly shook me, and it gave me. It actually gave me an excuse to really get anxious in the relationship that I was in at the time, and really kind of suffer and blame it all on that. But what happened in the relationship was that it triggered again. I had a fear that my mental health would cause her to leave. It created a huge anxious attachment for me. And the relationship did end a couple of months later. in terms of the mental health stuff, it made me start paying attention, because I'd been spending a lot of time with my friend Harry, just in a one-to-one capacity. Um, watching football together at the weekends, going to the pub, doing a lot of, I mean, this was sort of, 4 or 5 years ago, but, we were going out drinking, doing drugs, the ways in which we were connecting were very disconnected. There wasn't that was how we were spending a lot of our time. But I never knew he'd been suffering. So, losing Harry was, I think, the real kind of impetus for me to start paying attention to I always use the words the collective suffering of men, because there were so many symptoms of his behavior that I was ignorant and blind to. And as someone who, throughout the previous years where I'd started being open about my mental health, I started talking openly about it in 2015. I'd become unconsciously a space holder for anyone to talk about mental health with. People would open up to me all the time, and it was a very humbling, very, very beautiful experience. It gave me a lot of purpose. It made me feel great. Felt like I could help people. But when I sat there and looked at what he'd been through and the amount of times we'd spent together, and how he never even told me he'd suffering, and how I hadn't seen anything, it made me realize how much he'd been struggling, and how much he'd needed to hide and feared all of the emotions that were going on within him. So that was, I guess that was the bit that really got me onto paying attention to things like suicide rates amongst men. And all sorts of other things.
And what do you feel like, knowing, the background, obviously your friend, and, where do you think that deep pain comes from? Do you think it's like developmental trauma? Is there something that's happened in their life specifically, like from hearing about men's challenges? Where do you think it comes from? Because it doesn't just manifest out of nowhere. It must come from something a little bit deeper. I don't know if you've done that investigation work, but it's something that I'm really interested in. Yeah.
I think, obviously everyone is individual. It can come from, trauma can take shape in anyone at any time, and it doesn't have to be what you would call these capital T traumas. It doesn't have to be sexual assault, physical abuse, divorce of parents. It doesn't have to be one of those. Those things are obviously extremely valid and can occur, but trauma is, defined where at any point throughout your development where your emotional needs were not met. And, that manifests itself into every single one of us. Every single one of us has trauma. I think the challenge that a lot of men face is that from a very young age, the way that we are conditioned is very different to young boys and young girls are conditioned very differently.
Yeah.
We're taught to, as we know, men are taught to, or young boys are taught to, be brave, don't cry, come on, get on with it. Like, don't whinge. We're taught to stifle and fear and feel shame around expressing vulnerability, sadness, pain. So, whereas, oh, that'll be okay. The sort of, that's all right. We nurture young girls, and we protect them. And so that is for me that's the starting point. I had a guest on my podcast recently, an amazing woman called Kerry, who just, and I don't want to misquote or start just giving out, bullshit statistics, but she said, she quoted some ages that, there were noticeably different levels of empathy amongst young boys and young girls, even at ages sort of 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
So, that if we're instilling that inability to feel safe expressing pain from a very, very young age, what hope are we giving men, or young men, adolescent men, teenage boys, when, you're, I don't know, 13 years old and your parents get divorced and you don't know how to process pain, and you're told that you need to just get on with it and, whatever. Sexual trauma, that occurs in men as well. And I don't just mean sexual assault. I mean, just stifling of sexual, kind of creating your sexual identity. You know, we're taught to shame and fear our bodies, and you know, I don't know, like when we're young, most men, and that's something I've learned, is most men, when you talk about their journey into things like self-discovery of masturbation, it's all from a place of having to hide it, feeling shame about it, having to get it over and done with quickly. Yeah, like it's not a journey of excitement, safety, self-discovery. So there's that kind of trauma. Yeah, then you get, as I say, like it can happen at any point. These things can happen to all of us, and it's that markedly different environment that we are creating for men that I believe is then manifesting into huge disconnection in our adult lives. It's the reason why men struggle to connect in relationships. It's why you see these stereotypical heterosexual relationships where the woman wants to connect and talk and be open and connect through their emotions and their words, and men just, you know, want the simple life, and why can't she just leave me to it? And you know, it's
Yeah.
actually, that's just conditioning. Men want the same connection. Men want to experience love and safety and vulnerability, but we are taught that that is not what a man is. So it's how we reprogram, it's how we reconstruct and heal um, these damaging conditioning, you know, this damaging conditioning that we're doing to men. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do.
In a nutshell, that's the mission. No,
Yep.
I think it's a great mission. But I would love to know what are some of the healing modalities. I know you spoke a little bit about therapy, maybe some meditation. What things have helped you on your kind of healing journey and help you overcome? Obviously, it's always going to be there, but help you kind of,
Mm.
yeah, you know, jump back to more of a sort of love and joy instead of that, you know, always having that kind of cloud over your head. How have you moved through your own limitations, and what's been powerful for you?
I think there are there are levels in this. You know, the first ones are things like going to speak to a therapist. The reason why talkative therapies are so powerful is because we don't understand trauma. We don't understand what trauma looks like. We don't understand how it impacts us emotionally or psychologically. We just you know, we go through life, we build a reality based on our experience, and we just believe that's the way things are. We don't know that that's not just the way things are. It's how we've learned to experience and navigate the world through our trauma, our conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go and speak to someone, it is, you know, I always described it as it's like telling someone your story, and then they either read it back to you or they ask you questions, and it makes you see it in an entirely different way, usually one that paints you in a far kinder picture, with a lot more compassion towards yourself. You realize that the stories you've been telling yourself for your entire life are actually not true, and that you deserve you know, you deserve love, you deserve kindness, you deserve success, you deserve all of these things, and actually you've just been living within a bunch of self-limiting beliefs and stories. But then diving deeper, you know, yeah. So things like meditation, breath work, you know, again, sort of, you know, those sorts of practices are great because they do allow you to experience things like presence, stillness. You know, you get cathartic releases through practices like breath work. You know, you're allowed to shift a lot of emotional trauma, emotional release.
Yeah.
Um, just study, reading. You know, there is the work that I've been doing. So about 6 months ago, I launched, you know, a free online private community for men, and it's half like it's half a safe as, you know, it's half a safe space for men to show up, support each other, share your vulnerabilities, your struggles, you know, and help each other, and it's half kind of personal development. And you know, we have a book club,
Mm-hmm.
we have various challenges, and um, you know, one of the books that we read, so January, I remember it was the topic of masculinity, and we read The Way of the Superior Man by David Dida. And it is an incredible insight into unpacking the fact that all of us, regardless of gender or how we identify, the relationships that we are in, we all have these masculine and feminine energies. And it is the ability to identify, tap into, connect with both of those. And also for your partner too, as well. It allows you to create polarity and kind of excitement and intrigue and mystery in your relationships. It allows you to, when you master those, or you, and I certainly am not a master, by the way, but when you learn to start having fun with those and play around with those within yourself, you know, you're creating a connection with yourself. You are, yeah, you're learning to look inwards and pay attention to what's going on inside of you, rather than all of these external kind of forces and factors in our lives that we're taught to pursue and chase. So yeah, there's loads of things, but I think just, yeah, like I say, study, because study can be, okay, well, I'm going to study study yourself. And how you're going to do that? Well, that could be by way of breath work, yoga, trying new things, finding your purpose, passion, dharma. Like, you can do that by, and it could be, I told myself for years I'm not creative. Told myself for years I'm not a creative person. Look at the things that I liked in school. I liked maths. I liked, I don't know, sport. Sport's creative. But actually lied to myself. I used to be a really talented drummer. I love music. I love creating content on my social media pages. There's creativity in that. So yeah, I think it's just study yourself. Make you like your priority every single day, and seek to learn more about yourself.
Yeah, and I love that thing you said about building community online. And even obviously right now we can't do so much in person, but I can in Bali. But I don't know around the other worlds, it's quite on strict. But I know I've launched a women's circle like a year ago, and a similar kind of your men's group. It's just having that community piece, and I think there's so much relief and understanding when we can come together in community like we used to do, and share experiences and have that listening that a lot of us don't. We sometimes don't realize listening is just the most powerful medicine. um, yeah, I really love that. And can you tell us a little bit about, obviously, you've just quit your job. How did that feel? Like, how did that feel like going into work? And I know it was kind of planned, but you kind of did it, spontaneously as well. So maybe you can share that, and what feelings were you going through as you made that decision to say goodbye?
Yeah, I mean, I've been planning it for a little while. The work that I've been doing, it's been just over a year since I started the online space, the Honest Bloke Instagram page, and the the podcast has been going for about 5 months. The men's group about 6 months. So all of this work was just, it was, it was lighting me up, and it was giving me such passion and purpose. But I was really struggling because I was working 40 hours a week. I was working 9 till 6, Monday to Friday,
Mm.
and in a corporate job. And for anyone, if anyone that works with me or worked with me in that job listens to this, I've never said anything bad about that job. I loved it. As far as corporate jobs go, it was great. People were great. Money was good. But I was just resenting the time that I was spending there. So, I spoke to my managers about it. They were great. And I sat down with my manager a week ago, just to have a chat about how things were going. And he said, look, I know obviously you're looking at moving away at some point. How long do you think it will be? And I said, well, yeah, probably like maybe, I said 3 to 6 months, but probably around 6 months time. Like I should not be here in 6 months. And he said, yeah, fair enough, mate. He said, well, you're doing great, and, really, really happy with your performance, and, love that you're chasing your passion, and, if there's anything we can do, great, really, really lovely. That was on Thursday. I had a chat with a friend of mine about the projects that I want to put together. He's started some businesses, and I just realized throughout this conversation that I was a lot closer than I realized. And the only thing that was holding me back was that I was shitting myself, and I was disguising it as all of these practical reasons. Oh, yeah, well, get it all together over the next 3 or 4 months, and you'll be able to lower the hours you do and work 3 days a week. And I just went, actually, if I just quit like I could just, it forces me to just go all in on it. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I went into work on Monday this week. What is it, Friday now? So yeah, sat at my desk, looked at my computer, looked at a bunch of clients that I needed to call, and I went, I'm not making any of these calls. I just looked at them and went, I'm done. And so yeah, I just,
Wow.
yeah, and I mean, I had a chat with my manager about it. He was wonderful, and yeah, I just felt this massive sense of relief, or just, it was just a big exhale, and twinned with a lot of excitement, and like that nervous excitement you get when you know that something big is coming, when you know that it's going to force you outside of your comfort zone. But yeah, overall, it was just it was a very, very positive feeling, and it just filled me up with, right, okay, cool, well, nowhere to hide now.
Mm.
You've got to go and do it. And so this week's been, I'm sitting down and I've got to suddenly implement strategy, because I'm waking up and I'm doing these things. I'm going for a dip in the sea, and I'm going to meet my friends for coffee, and I'm like, shit, James, this is not being your own boss. Like, this is one of the perks, but you've got to, make sure you get everything set up. So, setting up over the next couple of weeks, and really, really, really excited to launch just all of the projects and plans that I've been kind of had on the back burner for a little bit.
That's amazing. I think so many people listening, if you're listening right now and you've had that intuitive call, and I think it's so inspiring, because so many of us, I know so many of the women I work with, they come to me with a health issue, physical, digestion, skin, energy, low in energy. And a big part of like the mind body connection piece, which I love in Ayurveda, is if we have fatigue, it's related to a lack of love for what one does. And so many of our health issues from like an Ayurvedic and yoga perspective come because they're kind of these like little knock on the doors, like, come on, you're in the wrong way, you need to go this way. And sometimes they get a little bit louder and louder and louder, until we get like a big smack and we wake up and we realize, I'm not fulfilling myself. And I think why
Mm.
we're here is to be of service and to do things that light us up. So it's amazing that you're doing that. And I would love to ask as well, how can women really hold space for men so they can feel heard and seen? And so for men that are experiencing, mental health issues, how can we as women and the feminine energy come into that space of making the men feel safe to share?
That's, I mean, an amazing question, and something that it is very difficult, because from the many conversations I've had in the last year, I do get a lot of whilst my content is predominantly aimed, sort of not aimed at men, but through the lens of a man, and sort of through just trying to, I guess, frame it for men. Mental health concerns are universal, and women can take an awful lot from hopefully take a lot from my content as well. But I've had a lot of women reach out over the last year who are in heterosexual relationships, and their male partners are struggling, and they say exactly that. How do we help? How do I how do I help him? He's really struggling. I'm desperate. It's quite, sometimes it's quite, it's a really concerning and difficult thing for them. And one of the hardest things is that men still, as with anyone, regardless of gender or problem, there's that phrase of, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. Men need to, the men who are struggling, or the men in these scenarios, will always need to be the ones who ultimately make the decision to go on the journey to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a challenging one, because we will resist it until sometimes that resistance will actually be stronger than the will of the relationship. That can often happen. They would rather lose their partner than step into the fear of exploring their own emotions. And that's what's really difficult, especially for women who love the men. These men love their women as well, and it's one of the more heartbreaking realities. But in terms of what women can do with their partners it can be exposing, especially if they're resisting, actively engaging in it. It can be things like simple things like playing podcasts in the background around, whether it's
The
masculine
honest
and
bloke.
feminine,
The
whether it's,
honest bloke
I mean,
podcast.
I've got I've got like 11 episodes in my podcast if you want to share those and jump into those. But no, not just my work. There are some amazing podcasts and amazing guests. I'm trying to think of some of the ones that I've listened to that are really good. Connor Beaton, he runs an Instagram page called Man Talks. Incredible work that he does. Mark Groves, Create the Love, specifically does some amazing work around relationships. And yeah, listen to a lot of his work. He's really valuable. Men have a pride and an ego where they don't want that, we like to think things are our idea. So when people come at us telling us that we need to level up and upskill and be better boyfriends, be better men, we're just going to switch off. It's triggering, it's confronting, it's who the fuck are you to tell me that sort of thing. But if you can if you can just slip it into their subconscious, play things in the background, ask them what their thoughts are. I don't know, read an Instagram post if you think something that could help them. Ask them their thoughts on it. And also, I would say one of the most, and I can understand this is very difficult sometimes, is having compassion for men's ignorance to themselves and to their own struggles. Because one of the biggest things that I have discovered over the especially the last couple of months as well, is for a lot of women who may have been on the receiving end of challenging behavior from men. I don't want to dress that up, if it's male violence towards women, gaslighting, all of, ultimately, men's suffering often gets transferred onto women in relationships. And it is all that is it's a passing of that energy because the men don't know how to process it. A lot of women are sat in suffering and pain, from men, and I respect and love and hold space for those women. There is a healing involved, and healing comes from compassion. And it's not my position to sit here and preach to women why, if they've been hurt by men, they need to just start being compassionate. It's not about that. I respect anyone's pain and suffering, but ultimately pain is, like I say, pain is an energy and an inexperience to process some form of emotion. And more often or not in men, that will transfer to anger. So, when you, for example, present this Instagram post talking about, men opening up and being vulnerable, and he responds with anger or dismissal, or might even, I don't know, ridicule you for it and say, I don't need that, whatever. It can be really challenging, but compassion, because what you're dealing with is an emotionally disconnected man who is fearful of tapping into that within him. So, but yeah, just bombard him with posts about being vulnerable and appeal to his ego as well. David Dieter's book it's all about, connecting with your feminine, masculine, all of these energies that we all embody, but ultimately it creates amazing, deeply connected relationships, emotionally, sexually. So, it's in our interest to heal. It's what we all need to do. It will help shape our lives in a way that is ultimately, just deeper, more meaningful, more connected.
And I really loved when my partner and I have felt that disconnection in the 3 years of our relationship. It's been many times. It feels like it's only now smoothing out. We kind of moved in together and got dogs, and it was all kind of throwing in the deep end, whereas normally people wait for about a year before they move in. But we have had a couple of experiences with magic mushrooms, ayahuasca. I'm not advocating for this, but it has been very healing for our relationship, and holding that safe space. And I think we spoke about it before. A lot of women I see, and a lot of women are in this masculine energy. And when we're in that doing energy, we're not in that receptive feminine energy that is that safe container for men, the womb of creation kind of thing. And I think if women can rest and come back to their own feminine energy and be in tune with that cycle and and be more, I think that does allow for men to open up a little bit because they feel more safe to do so. And I think if men haven't had that open, loving space growing up, it can definitely trigger those abandonment wounds or that kind of energy. So I think that's something that I've seen in my relationship when I've been in my own masculine energy. I've been business and I've been striving, and it's caused me further disconnection because I'm not in that feminine receptivity and flow. And I think that's been really powerful for me, is just reminding myself when I'm a little bit too much in my driven, state of wanting to get here and forgetting, the moment, and being present with that. How's it shifted in your new relationship? I know you have a new relationship now, so how has that shifted the dynamic? Like, do you feel pretty safe in this relationship since moving from your previous relationships?
Yeah, so I mean, right now I'm in the most wonderfully safe. That's the word that's come throughout our relationship. Even when we first started talking and we first started being open and vulnerable and sharing our stories, the word safe has always been there. My journey into my relationship. So Olivia and I have been together for six months now.
Wow.
My journey into it was that I after going back to the relationship that I was in, lost Harry, and the relationship ended. That really triggered a big wound for me, and it caused me. I sat with it for actually the best part of 2 years. So I knew that it had really deeply it had brought something up within me, a really deep wound, and I sat with it for, as I say, the best part of 2 years. I didn't run away from it. I knew that I wasn't gonna, I didn't consciously go out and, I don't know, try and numb it with alcohol or drugs. I think during that time I actually started drinking a lot less, started doing drugs a lot less.
Were you celibate?
Um,
Is that when you were celibate? Yeah.
well, so for 2 years I wasn't. I was still dating. That was the numbing that I was kind of doing. I was still going out and I was still entertaining attention of women, sleeping with women, like dating them, going on dates. But I was showing up what I deemed to be in the most honest way I could. I was saying that I'm figuring my stuff out. I don't know that I'm ready for a relationship. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing some work. The honest truth was I wasn't, and I was still allowing myself to connect with women in a way that ultimately was going to end up hurting both them and myself, because it was always going to reach a point, because I hadn't healed and I
Mm.
hadn't sort of dived into the trauma and really what had come up for me. I was People were always going to get hurt, so I basically, it was, what was it, last year I dated someone for a couple of months, and she fell in love with me and I felt nothing, and it was just awful. I thought I'd navigated this situation really well. I'd been really open and honest, but I ended up hurting her, and that relationship, that sort of dating scenario for a couple of months, it ended, and I went, I've got to stop this. I've got to completely disconnect. And so, I went through a period of 4 months, 4 months completely celibate, no dating, no talking to women. I'm not talking completely. Obviously, I didn't walk away anytime a woman asked me how I was doing.
Like a month.
But no, no sort of dating apps, no flirting, no sex. Went on a journey around self-pleasure and kind of reconnecting to my body, because my own masturbation practices had become very disconnected and full of shame.
Mm.
So that was 4 months, and ended up deciding, after a conversation with a a women's kind of connection and dating coach. We had this conversation, and I went, oh God, maybe I am ready to step back in. And I downloaded a dating app, and connected with this girl. So I live in Bournemouth, but my radius was pretty big, and I connected with this girl in London. And turns out that she had also been on a celibacy journey for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And so that was the start of it. And
the horny buggers.
So I mean, it was there was a level of a real intrigue into someone's journey, and because ultimately it will always come from healing.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to heal something. When you abstain from something, it gives you the space to observe, to feel, to heal. And I think what when I looked back at my time, I'd spent 2 years abstaining from relationships. So I think I'd set a lot of groundwork there, but I hadn't dived into it. And when I stopped, I just had all of these mind-blowing revelations that came out of nowhere, like these like epiphanies and light bulb moments that would just occur at the strangest times of the day. I wasn't sat trying to consciously unpack my trauma. I suddenly realized, oh shit, that's why I've been showing up in relationships like that my whole life. Oh shit, that's the trauma I was trying to heal. So
you had like, a mother wound or a father wound?
So mine was one of the biggest I had 2 big realizations during my celibacy. One was, yeah, sure, no, I'm happy to.
If you want, because you're so honest. So
yeah, I see. Using my Instagram handle against me. So no, the first one was that by the way, I'll always preface this with, I think the way I was able to unpack this and get to these realizations myself is because I've been to therapy so many, a few times.
Yeah.
So my cognitive process is sort of that way inclined. But I realized that in every relationship, so I was 30 at this point. I'm still 30 now, so this was last September. I realized that the 3 times in my life that I'd ever been what I would say truly in love, I'd been showing up in those relationships every time more and more at like 100%, like emotionally giving it my all, loving them, giving them my kind of like emotionally giving them my all, holding space for them, empathizing, holding space for their trauma, trying to heal them. The whole like trying to fix thing was always there. But the reason that I had always done that is because at the beginning of my first relationship, my first love, when I was like between like 15 and 18, my mum and dad separated. My mum left my dad because she had been going through a deep depression for about 5 years after her mum died. And my dad did not know how to show up for her emotionally. He did the typically masculine thing. How do I support her? I go to work. I go and work really hard. I go and earn as much money as I have to so I can keep us in, the beautiful house that he'd worked so hard to get us into. So that was ultimately what created their disconnect. My mum didn't have that emotional support. She was with someone who did not know how to hold space, be vulnerable, support her through that. And it led to the breakdown of the relationship. So what I realized is that every single time I entered into a relationship, I was trying to show up so much in the opposite because I was trying to heal that wound and I was trying to stop my mum from leaving my dad. Or what I was trying to do is I was trying to stop my partner from leaving me. So actually I've been showing up in every relationship I'd ever been in from an anxious attachment perspective. So I was just trying. And yeah, ultimately it just, as I say, obviously wasn't creating secure attachments. The other realization that I had was so my partner shortly, in a couple of months after my friend Harry's funeral, the relationship just became very, very, my anxiety came through, and her avoidant like massively kicked in. She panicked, didn't know how to handle me, and she connected with someone and she left me for him. And whilst that, I can look back on that now with compassion and kindness, deeply, deeply hurt me at the time. And I remember telling myself, like, at some point these feelings will go, they'll just disappear. Before I do all the work, they're just going to go at some point. And I remember that I had this realization that, I'd been loved 3 times, and the first two relationships, I could always look back on them with a level of kind of kindness and compassion. So I always knew that there would be like a little bit of me that would have some love in my heart for those women that I dated and those women that I was in love with. Because I was hurt by this person in a way that I'd never been hurt before. No one had ever cheated on me or never kind of done that to me before. My ego was not allowing me to have that bit in my heart that would always still love that person. It was saying, no, I will reject that. Like, absolutely not. I will not. That will get out. You do not have space in my heart. I'm not going to allow that.
Wow.
So it was only in my healing and that sort of, that period of time that realization came, and I went, it's okay. It's okay that you loved that person. It's okay that she loved you. It's okay that it didn't work out. It's okay that she, whatever happened, because like I say, it was just my ego talking, and it was me taking the whole situation personally. It was me ultimately sitting in victim mode. I sat in victim mode about that for 2 years. And when I realized that it just wasn't personal, and it was her own shit, and if she was unable to navigate that situation the way that I had hoped she would, with compassion, then that's on her. And I wish her all of the healing and sort of kindness that she deserves. Like, we all deserve that.
Yeah.
So that was, and like I say, I can now feel like you can always, like, if you think back, I can remember the feeling of loving my first girlfriend. I can remember loving my ex-fiance. I can remember loving her, and I don't feel pain over any of those anymore.
Yeah.
So, don't get me wrong, that's in the past. I very, very much now embody all the love for my beautiful partner now. And it's nice to be able to let go of that pain.
Well, it feels very nourishing to hear a man speak about love and pain in such a way, and I think hopefully it will inspire some men out there that it's safe to do that. And I think we ultimately heal through our relationships. We heal through connecting and feeling safe, and yeah, it's really the journey home. It's just remembering that we're all connected, and we all just seek love and companionship. And I really appreciate you sharing your truth. It's really beautiful to see. But yeah, I'd love to know, I know you've got some things coming up in the future. Like, how can people connect with you? And also, please share one of your favorite episodes on the Honest Bloke podcast, so we can tune in and listen to your
God.
podcast too.
Right.
You know this off by heart.
Yeah, I should do. Okay, so in terms of the podcast, I would say, here we go. I've had a couple. So the first 7 episodes were all with men. And I did an amazing episode with a sort of an intimacy, relationship, and dating coach called David. He's become a good friend of mine. Episode 6, we had a conversation around dating, sexual consent, tantra, and wanking or masturbation.
Love it.
Great episode with a guy called Drew. Talked about addiction, porn, and celibacy. Talked more about my celibacy journey. He was the one that facilitated it and sort of called a bunch of men in to go on this journey. Those two will get you started. But there's a lot of great episodes. Had some amazing conversations with women, really challenging conversations with women. One with Aileen Quinn. It was after the Sarah Everard murder, which was a really challenging conversation, but a really beautiful one, and one that I'm so grateful for having. So there's some really diverse conversations in there around a lot of different topics. In terms of connecting with me, so at the moment, obviously, feel free to drop me a DM on Instagram. I'm revamping the website, getting ready to kind of relaunch the men's group. So the men's group is going to be relaunching for the 1st of June. and it's just going to go to an entirely new level. It's been a free service that kind of people can kind of show up and do a few, just kind of drop in, drop out of. That's going to be converting to like a subscription based model. So essentially, like it's not going to be expensive. It will be affordable, but it's about just getting that investment into it so that you're then more active. You're going to show up, you're going to participate, you're going to invest in yourself. But the value will just be phenomenal. And you get that community aspect, and you'll suddenly see, one of the biggest things that I've learned around sharing my story is that all of the deep things that I've ever felt shame or discomfort or disconnect or anything about, embarrassment over, anytime I've ever shared those, the amount of people that go, oh my God, me too. And it creates connection, and it creates safety, and it creates like a bond and a relationship. That's what that group is. That there will be personal development stuff in there. There's going to be modules around, everything that I've discussed. There's going to be a library of essentially like healing programs that you can go through. I'm also going to be launching, kind of coaching programs, so small group coaching programs, and keep doing the podcast. So there's loads of ways that you can connect. But come follow me over on Instagram. Don't go to the website yet because it's not done, but just at the honest bloke.
It might be by the time we've launched. I'm not sure when, but I will put all your links on the show notes, and the women or men, hopefully men too. I'm sure the women listening will
everyone just
the men
come and
too.
say hi.
Yes, come and say hi. Thank you so much, James. It's been a pleasure to hear your story and to hear some things that you've gone through, and I'm sure people listening will resonate a lot with it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely talking to you.
My pleasure. See you guys next week on the Dharma Journey. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to connect with us, my Instagram is @BriarRoots, @the Dharma Journey. Please feel free to send us your favorite episode, and we'd love to hear your feedback. If you want to reach and connect with me further, I offer weekly women circles every Sunday. Also, Ayurvedic healing programs, consultations. So all of my details are at the bottom. Thank you so much for listening. This is really a part of the Dharma Journey movement to bring us closer together, connection, community, collaboration, and really inspire one another on our path towards liberation. Thank you so much for listening. Have an incredible day. I hope.